Hello, how's everyone doing? My name is petaQ, I am the #1 ranked Master System prolific speedrunner. I've ran just under a quarter of the Master System library now, 76 games. And I thought I'd make a little tier list of the story so far, and give you some recommendations for what to run on the Master System and what to avoid. So we'll start off with what I think is the quintessential Master System speedrun, which is Castle of Illusion. And this is kind of like the SMB3 of the NES to the Master System. You know, this game is so good that anyone who runs the NES should be looking at this, whether you like the Master System or not. Fantastic Disney platformer. There are lots of little tricks in the run. You don't have to do any of them to get a good time. You can very easily get a mid-14 with only a few weeks' work. Maybe the only annoying thing is the bolt skip in the clock tower, but we found a way to manipulate the bolt patterns and understand what pattern we're on. So if you really don't want to worry about that, you can just go around the long way and cost yourself 50 seconds, but you get health in this game, so you've always got extra damage options. There's plenty of health in and around the place with cake, so you don't have to worry about living on the edge. And you've got infinite continues, so it's a good casual friendly game. And I know that the SMS has a little bit of a reputation for being an input eater, but the Disney games on the Master System are really well programmed. This one, you won't feel any input eating at all. There's a little bit of it when there's lag going on, but it's predictable. So if you look at the leaf skip in the first stage, for example, there's a bit of that. Or in places like in the Miserable Castle when you take damage on the first screen. But it's something that you can predictably know about and adapt to, so it's not terrible. Virtually all the top runners on the Master System have run this, with the exception of Radman. So Corbett's there, B-Trim, Rasmus, I'm there. It's a really beautiful run, and you can pick and choose what bits you want to do. So, give you an example of that. B-Trim has the third best time still from world record, and in his run in the library, he does something called the A-skip, where he's damage boosting off a letter A, save a couple of seconds. Even in Corbett's world record now, he doesn't do that, so there's still room at the top for a little bit of picking and choosing. It's not too long of a run, it's only 13-14 minutes. It would only take you a couple of weeks, a few weeks to get to the 14 X's. Not too stressful, really beautiful game, perfect speedrun. Now, if you like that game, but you want something a little bit more casual, and you're a fan of the graphical beauty of the Master System, then I am going to recommend you to play Legend of Illusion instead. Originally a Game Gear game, so it takes full use of the extra palette. Beautiful graphics and animation, some of the best on the system. You're not using your bum to damage enemies in this one, you're actually throwing soap. You still get to murder some dragons, so it's okay. 15-16 minute speedrun. The only really difficult part of this one is the Pete fight at the end, which takes a little bit of getting used to, just from the timing. But we had this in the Sega Crew 5G race, everyone enjoyed it. It's really chill because, unlike Castle of Illusion, for this one, when you go to the boss fights, you get all your health back. And as well as that, instead of having to collect power stars in the castle to raise your health, in Legend of Illusion, the game automatically starts giving you extra health as the game goes on. So it's really good for beginning speedrunners, or if you want something a little bit less challenging, because the game is helping you out that much more. You get infinite continues again. Some of the bosses are a little bit more, punishing if you get it wrong. So the lion boss in the Crystal Forest, you can lose a few cycles if you don't get it perfectly. But that also means that unless you're going for world record, you don't really have to worry about the bosses as much. You can just let them be. There's a couple of auto-scrollers. It's good for switching the brain off a little bit as well, so it's not like a very intense speedrun. And this is really just like one of the most beautiful adverts for Master System speedrunning that there is. Everyone could enjoy this speedrun. It's not too difficult. I know it says Tech Toy on the box. I promise you it's a beautiful run. It's definitely one of the runs that anyone who's serious about speedrunning should be looking to do. And then we'll also look at Land of Illusion. And Land of Illusion was the sequel to Castle of Illusion. It's also an S tier speedrun. Most people think that Land of Illusion is like the best platformer on the Master System. It's another of Corbett's favourites. Beecham has run it, the 8-Bit Beast, Berlin Dude. I personally found that the input eating was a little bit more obvious in this one, just because the game is pushing the engine that much harder. But it's very similar to Castle of Illusion, but a little bit longer. So kind of like the Lost Levels to Mario Brothers. You get health through the castle, so you can make the job a little bit easier if you want to. 25-26 minute speedrun with lots of little tricks. Again, you don't have to do any of them, but this is a really good game for pushing the skill ceiling. So the Blacksmith Castle, where you end up having to push a key on some switches in order to push the auto-scrolling backwards. And if you look at Corbett's run, he's really good at timing that precisely so that he's not losing any frames. And the world record is only like by half a second, so it really makes a difference at his level. But if you don't want to go all out, again, this is not difficult to get a 27-26 minute run in without too much effort. Lots of varied scenarios, lots of colour. The one thing with this game as compared to Castle of Illusion, the bosses are much quicker and much more snappy. In Land of Illusion, there's a bit more cycle-based action and there's a bit more spatial awareness required. So me personally, I found some other bosses a bit more challenging. But again, this isn't anything terrible. It's a longer speedrun, but it doesn't take that much more learning. And you can tailor it just as much as the other two. So, absolutely perfect, beautiful speedrun. Hasn't been in the Master 8 yet. It was in the Master 15 a while ago, though. And this is definitely something that any good speedrunner should be looking to play. Now, if you like the look of Castle of Illusion, we've discussed that if you want to go more casual, you play Legend, and if you want to go harder, you play Land of Illusion. But what if you say to yourself, I don't even want a health bar? Well, if you don't want a health bar, Lucky Dime Caper is going to be the game for you. Dime Caper is my favourite Master System platform speedrun. Again, it's S tier. Everyone should look at this. I think NES runners like Prissy, people who like being on the edge and are at the top end of the Big 20 would enjoy this game. Because you don't have a health bar, and if you take damage, you lose your weapon, and then you're really in trouble. But what's really cool about this speedrun is you can still make a difference. You can still win, even if you're behind at the end of the game. So the last couple of world records between Corbett and me, we've both taken damage in the Egypt stage, and we've managed to get the hammer back and still make world record in the final castle. And this one is a bit more intense, not just because you lose your weapon when you take damage, but moment to moment. This is a run where you've got to be that much more awake and alert, because every time you jump through the game, you'll save 7 frames. There's a lot of routing with that. There are specific setups you can do for various little tricks to save time and cycles. You can be as aggressive as you want, but also if you just want to play this game regularly, it's really well made. It responds beautifully. It's just top tier. Like, this game, the music is so good, and it's just fun. You know, it's perfect. There's a wonderful wrong warp skip in the final castle, which looks really cool as well. It's only 15 minutes. Again, most of the top runners have run this. It's been in the Master 8. What more could you ask for? So if you want something that puts you on the knife edge a bit more, makes you really work for your PBs, then the Dime Caper is going to be for you. Now, another game that I adore, let's look at Prince of Persia. Now, what tier would I put Prince of Persia in? That's a good question. It's definitely at least a B tier. So if you don't know, Prince of Persia is a game that was ported to every console under the sun, and it's like Marble Madness and Lemmings. Every version is slightly different. and the Master System version is really broken. And when I first looked at the world record years and years ago, I thought it was black magic. You know, you think of me being a top speedrunner, and I thought it was witchcraft. But it turns out it's really accessible, it's fun to play, there are setups for all the tricks you do. Despite that, and despite the fact that there have been new tricks since discovered, I'm still half a minute behind world record. So the skill ceiling on this one is insane. Like petaQ's run, he is literally in his head parsing the animation frames on what he's doing in order to get everything correct. And one frame slip is doom. And the lag management means that you have to know how what you're doing affects lag in the game. So there are times when you'll play a screen or a level differently, and you'll have to know what the result is going to be because you can end up losing time on fights even though you're playing the screen the same way. So I think this is not quite a run that is S tier, because not only can it be very frustrating if you don't have the knack of it, but also because it's very easy to get to a good time and be happy with it. But I think it's definitely an A tier run. You know, if you're interested at all in the Master System, this is brilliant. And it really is one of the best speedrun adverts for the Master System because of how broken it is. You know, if you think of top NES runs like Zelda where you've got screen wrapping, Prince of Persia has screen wrapping as well. You've got Out of Bounds. It's just very visually spectacular. It goes down well in marathons. And again, there's lots of little things you can do. So you can skip password screens if you want to. There are different tricks you do or don't have to do. And again, if you just want to play the game, you can still play decently well and get an 18-19 minute time without doing any of the difficult stuff. Only 2 runners so far. I think this is one of those games that's been underrun. I'm going to be a cheerleader for this one in time to come. We'll make a great Master 8 game. Prince of Persia, solid A tier. Everyone should enjoy running that. So let's just pick a game out here. Let's go for Quartet. Quartet is another of my very favourite runs. Is it A tier? Is it S tier? So, in my heart of hearts, I want to give this an S tier, because this is not a game I owned as a kid. Master System was my first major console, so I was a little kid, and I'm on Christmas Day, and I've got Alex Kidd, and I've got Sonic. You've got that childhood joy. Quartet wasn't a game I owned. I only started playing it in February. But the moment I picked this game up, I felt like that kid again on Christmas Day. It is the most beautiful Master System game. It's from the first generation, so it's way earlier than the games we've discussed so far. And it's got that Sega arcade ethos, where you've got hidden secrets throughout it. You've got one loop of hardcore difficulty, beautiful graphics, optimistic soundtrack. Soundtrack was done by the same guy who worked on Super Hang-On, need I say more? And if you know me, my speedruns, I love short speedruns where you can really squeeze the pips. This fits the bill down to a T. So this is a 6-minute speedrun. But what's really good about Quartet, for any of you out there who want something that you don't have to work for a million years on, there's no learning. So you want to look at the beats of bosses and just like learning the cycles of enemies appearing. But apart from that, this is a game where you just learn by playing. You get into a rhythm with it. And never once when I've done this as a speedrun, never once have I been annoyed at the controls or the RNG or any part of it. It's very, very rare that I can say that about a game. I couldn't say that about any of these other 5. Quartet is one of those rare games. So it's definitely A tier. The one thing I think holding it back from S tier is that at the very top level, you don't feel like you're being squeezed for a pound of blood from it. You know, if you want world record in Castle of Illusion, in Dime Caper, in other games that we'll get to, you feel like you have to put your soul into a furnace. Quartet doesn't quite have that level, but it is basically a perfect speed game. It is casually brilliant, it is relaxing, it is just so vibrant and fun, and it fits exactly this description of the A tier. You know, you want to boil the SMS down to its most wonderful highlights, Quartet is going to be the game for you. So, if you don't want something that's terribly difficult, this is a good game for you. It takes maybe literally half an hour to learn. You can get a 7-minute something time very easily because there are health drops all throughout the game, so you can stack yourself with as much health as you want. You can be as aggressive as you want. You can just enjoy the experience. It's beautiful. Again, there's only 3 runners of this, and I know this video may come across as an advert for some of my favourite games, but legitimately I think everyone should be running Quartet. It would be an ideal game for a race. It would be an ideal game for someone who wants something Master System coded, but who doesn't want to make too much effort. It's just beautiful. Let's go on to Ease. For those of you who don't know, Ease is probably the most infamous Master System speedrun. I'm going to go into the prolific list here. And we'll search for Ease. There are 45 people who've done this run. And it's still like the 3rd fastest on the Master System because of an arbitrary code execution credits warp. We got B-Trim, we got Kokami, we got Gampling, we've got Izzy, Joe Polito, Taco, Megami, Rasmus. Everyone has ran this. And again, what's really cool about this speedrun is that it's very easy to pull off and to learn what to do, but you can still optimize it down to the nubbins. So getting top 15 would be a good goal, getting something below 22 seconds. But what's really nice is that you can do it in sections of like half an hour, and you can come back to it months later without needing to de-rust at all. And of course, if you want to play the full game, you've also got that option. I think the no mirror glitch is like half an hour. Let me have a look. Yeah, 25 minutes. So if you want something where you like doing the any percent credits warp, but then you want something a little bit meatier, you've got an option in this RPG game to do a 25-minute run. And you can't say that about many RPGs. A lot of the time, RPGs are either 20 seconds or 5 hours. So this is obviously a perfect smsPoint game because it's 3000 coded. So it's very easy just to do one run, get 2500 and run. I think it can't go higher than B tier because it's such a short run. And the only way to get faster is by mashing. And if you're mashing as fast as you need to in this game, you're going to get frustrated by the amount of times you make mistakes. You're going to get frustrated by NPCs talking to you. You're going to get frustrated by missing the setup by 1 pixel and crashing the game. But it's a solid game. It's definitely one of those where anyone who wants to go on the SMS prolific leaderboard should be looking at this. And it's a fun little thing to do in marathons. Now, Zool, on the other hand, I wouldn't put in B tier. I would say C tier. Now, if I go to Zool, if I can find it in my own spreadsheet, which is so well organized, this has got twice as many runners, 55. And it's even quicker, it's only 9.84 seconds, so you can do this faster than 100 meters. But the problem with Zool is that the arbitrary code execution in this one is frame perfect. And it's on the first screen of the game. And if you get it wrong, then either you're going to spend another few times doing it and getting a last place time, or you're going to reset and you're going to have to wait 20 seconds between attempts. And that gets very tiring very quickly. So if you want to get 3 SMS points, grind this for a couple of hours, get one time, and that's it, you're done. But it's janky as hell. And I got extremely lucky because I did this the first time I tried, and then I could never do it again. But it's not something that you do for anything other than getting points on the prolific list. It's not fun, it's just numbers. So if you want something in terms of a short silly run, go for ease. If you're really hardcore, do Zul. Now, if you like ease, and you like the idea of something that you can optimize, and you like something short, and you want SMS points, I'm going to stick James Pond 2 in A category, in the A tier. Let's find that in the sheet. James Pond 2 has got a cheat category. It's got 14 runners, so we've got the any percent here, only 2 people. That's yet to be optimized. That would make a fun SMS goal. But the cheat category has got 14 people. We have got Baldmate, we've got JKL, Joe, Rasmus, Smart Alec. Lots of top runners on this one. And the world record for this is under 30 seconds. It's extremely optimized. So what's good about this speedrun? It is literally free. You cannot lose with this speedrun because you do a cheat where you get infinite health and lives. You complete one level by a backdoor, and then you beat the final boss, and that's it. There's literally no way to fail this run. And what's really good is you can optimize this in various different ways. So you can avoid a star in the first level to save a few frames. You can exit that level by ducking into the barber pole to save a jumping animation. On the way to the final boss, you can pick from going left and exceeding the speed cap on the stairs, or you can play it safe and go right. And on the boss itself, you can try and get early hits on the snowman. And it's kind of a luck-based thing, but there's a rhythm to it. And you might get lucky and get 1 or 2 hits. But again, it's not going to take you long to get a decent run of this. You can come back to it in chunks whenever you like. And again, it's something that you can optimize in little bits whenever you fancy just a half hour at the end of your stream, or you just want some mental downtime, because it doesn't take much thinking or doing. It's just, 30 seconds, bang it out. It's good for grinding without grinding, if that makes sense. But again, just this game is an A-tier game because it's exactly in that core of European Master System games with good graphics, good sound, quirky platforming, really solid responses. There's no input eating on this one, there's no glitches. It's just a really solid all-around game. And who knows, you might be one of the people who says, well, I want to optimize the any percent category over here. So at the moment, you'll get 1,200 points for this, but if more people do it, more people will get more points for it. So that could become a good prolific option in future as well. Let's pick another game. Let's go for Outrun. Outrun is probably one of the best racing games you can do on the Master System. Where do I think Outrun should be? It's definitely above B tier. You've got 5 different endings to choose from. Beautiful gameplay, no input eating. It's intuitive. The only difficult thing with Outrun is getting used to the elevation changes and the enemy cars, but that's nothing too difficult for anyone who's ever played a racing game. It's very universal. And if you want to get used to this, you could play the Genesis or the arcade version first to get a flavour of it, see if you like those. I think this is one of those where anyone who loves the Master System should be playing this game. I don't think it's quite S tier, because it's going to take someone with a yen for racing, and because the Master System inevitably, there's a little bit of culture change. It's not as universal as some of the racing games, but it's right up there. And it's a really optimized game, but again, because you've got different endings, that's the wrong thing, but we're here anyways. Because you've got different endings, you can pick from 5 of them, and that's good as well because you can get 5 different times and one's your PB. So you don't have to suffer the same thing all the time, you can mix it up. Lots of different strong runners here as well. Beatram, Taco. Where's Marceau? There's Marceau. He's got a world record in this. And I've got a lovely little link here to GameFAQs. I found this essential for learning Outrun because we've got this excellent visualization of all the courses. Now, I know this might sound strange because I'm a super hang-on runner, but running Outrun, I found this absolutely invaluable for learning the turns and the severity of them. It gives you a little bit of explanation and chef's notes. And it also gives you the options for what different paths you can take and what they're like, who they would suit. So when this was in the Master 8, a lot of people picked Goal A. And when I initially looked at it, I picked Goal A as well. But then I looked at this wonderful FAQ, and I found that given what it was telling me, Goal D was going to be better for me. And I was able to get a decent time pretty quickly. So there's lots of resources for it. It's a wonderful game. Anyone who wants to run anything more than 2-3 games on the Master System, this should be in your targets. And again, if you want to test it out, you can do each of the different goals any different way you want, see what works for you. And it's not going to take you that long either, it's a 5-minute racing game, so you don't have to invest years into it. But if you want to get better at it, it's got a really high skill ceiling. Like if you watch Chess Jerk and JFred and people do races of this, it is really high level. Let's go to a racing game that's a little bit more specialised. If I can find it. Where is it? Where are you? There you are, World Grand Prix. So, World Grand Prix is either a B or a C tier, I think. It's a beautiful game. It's got that early Master System charm. It's based on the Hang-On engine, so that makes it a winner. The one thing that you might struggle with in this game is that if you crash, then you'll explode. You'll lose a lot of time. And if you're doing a speedrun of this game, you have to qualify under a certain time for 12 courses, and you also have to qualify fast enough to earn points to upgrade your car for the difficult tracks. Now, you can play on 50 FPS. I would recommend that. But even if you brake carefully and try and pinball the other cars, it can be difficult to get a rhythm with this one. It sort of feels like the steering has a wrong conversion. And you can go off-road, you can kind of try and weave between cars, but often you'll get double teamed, they'll change lanes on you at the last minute. It's a little bit more awkward. And it's not the best game for SMS point grinding either, because to get one run of this, you're going to need to finish all the courses in a row without game overing. And you can play them in any order you want, but again, you've got a bit of learning to this. It's very easy to make just 1 or 2 mistakes on one course and lose your run. I think even racing game specialists might have a little bit of difficulty with this one. I'm hesitating to put it in B tier because it's not brilliant for SMS points. And I'm hesitating to put it below C tier because it's not that janky, it just takes a bit of getting used to. It's a brilliant game, I just don't think it's something that most people would love speedrunning or trying. I mean, you can do the track editor percent. I'll show you that. didn't think of that actually. So we've got level 1, level 2, level 3. Lots of big boys here. I haven't got the track editor tracked for some reason. But there's a track editor in this one where you can make a 21-second track and beat that. So if you want to do that for a speedrun, in that case, it's definitely a B or an A tier. But as far as completing the full game, you would need to be confident that you would enjoy this or it would get boring quite quickly. Let's go to another racing game. Struggling to pick them out from all these different backgrounds here. Buggy Run. So if you've looked at World Grand Prix and you think it's a bit much, or if you've looked at Outrun and you want something a little bit lower effort, I'm going to recommend Buggy Run. It's a really cool little run. It's only 6 minutes long on the beginner category. It's sort of like rock and roll racing. Isometric view. It's kind of like super off-road because you can buy nitros and upgrade your vehicle. But it is not too difficult at all. It's easy to get into, it's easy to just do a runoff. Again, this would be a good one to put in a masteration future at some point. And if you want to do the intermediate course, that would be a nice extra challenge. So if you're really good at racing games, this would be a good fit for you. If you want something to expand on your SMS points, this would also be a good one. Let's find it here and see how many people are running it. 7 so far. I think we could do a few more people doing this. There's probably still a bit of wriggle room on the world record, or a 625 here. Alpha Nerd 627. I mean, I'm down at 638 and I literally did like an hour of attempts. It is not difficult to get a decent run on this. And it's one of those games where you don't have to put too much effort into racing or being a racer. It's very pick up and play. So a great little game for if you just want to add to your short speedruns collection. What have we got here? We've got Chase HQ. Now, Chase HQ is similar, I think. I think it also goes in B tier. So Chase HQ is, again, a 6-7 minute run where you've got branching paths. You've got to, instead of finishing a race, you've got to attack and destroy an enemy car, a criminal. Nothing too difficult with this one either. You've got turbos you can use, you can buy upgrades as well, so if you're struggling you can buy extra turbos. It doesn't take much learning at all for the courses. There's only 5 courses to do in a loop. And what's good about this one is that it's, again, not too much learning. You can just pick it up and play. It's pretty intuitive. You might lose 30 seconds from a bad level one time, but again, it's easy just to get a time, see if you want to improve. Nothing really difficult to it, and again, to get a top time doesn't take that much. Once you want to go for world record level, it does get a little bit annoying, but it's like any game where it just takes a little bit of learning the culture of it and like working out some strategy on the back of an envelope. We've only got 4 runners so far. We do think that sub 6 is possible, and this, I think, is one of those games where top NES runners would have a chance at getting sub 6. So if you're interested in the SMS, I think Chase HQ has an NES port actually. You could try it on there first, see how you like it. But again, it's like you might think it's a racing game. It's more just like an arcade game. It's very suitable for anyone really. You don't have to be a specialist. Lovely little speedrun to try. Now, talking of games that have got an NES port, let's look at Captain Silver. So Captain Silver I think is one of these weird games that is still flying under the radar on the Master System. There are still only 6 runners of this game, but we've got Apollo here, one of the NES legends. We've got Radman, Master System legend, Rasmus, ESA legend, Red Pepper, who is one of the greats of all time on the Master System. And Captain Silver has an NES port, but it's a bit different. On the Master System, you play the US version. There are only 4 stages. It's mostly just a really short platformer, and the only difficult thing is a couple of the bosses, and there's a little bit of jank to the movement with climbing ladders, and you can spam damage with your sword on the bosses. It didn't take me that long at all to get a run, and I managed to get a sub 5 within like 4 or 5 days, so it's not terrible at all. You've got continues, so if you die a few times on the final boss, you can just start the level again. There's a little bit of spatial stuff with some of the moving platforms, but that's something I struggle with and I was okay with it, so you should be fine as well. And it's one of these platformers that's like character platformers, short. It is very Master System in terms of you play it and you're like, what the heck is this? But it's fun. It's got FM sound, which is nice. I don't think it's quite an A tier speedrun, because if you want to go for anything below 5-minute boundary, you've really got to push some cycles. And what's annoying is that you can lose the entire run on one janky hit on the final boss, which is not enjoyable at all. Apart from that though, it's a solid run. Like, it's definitely one of those that should have more runners. It would suit a Master 8 race. It doesn't take long to learn at all, maybe an hour or 2. There's an excellent tutorial by Apollo teaching Radman and China Berry Blast on the Sega Crew channel. That's how I learned it. And actually, there is no page on SRC for the European version of Captain Silver, which has actually got 2 more full stages. So if you wanted to create some new science with this game, you could run the European version instead. And you would have extra stages to work on. I think it's a solid B tier speedrun. It's got a bit of character to it, it's fun, it's sweet. It's one of those games that should have more people as soon as more people run the Master System. It definitely needs more attention. Another game in that bracket, New Zealand Story, also known as Kiwi Careers, again a game on the NES, on the Genesis as well. And it's a game where you've got warps throughout, but it's a brutally difficult arcade platformer if you play it normally, and New Zealand Story was one of the few games I owned as a kid on the Master System that I never actually beat. So I only beat it last Christmas when I played it as a speedrun. But the Master System speedrun is not bad at all. Almost all of the warps are very easy. The controls are very fair and consistent. I don't recall any jank at all with them. There's a little bit of lag, but again, it's predictable. And if you want to cheese this game, there is one little bit in, I think it's like 4-3, where you've got to move left and right in water to jump onto an enemy, but it's not difficult to do that, and it doesn't matter if you lose 5-10 seconds. You need to upgrade to a laser for the final boss, but again, if you want to cheese that, there is a spot literally just before the final boss where you can make bomb enemies spawn repeatedly, and you can just cycle through the weapons until you get the one you want. So it's not difficult at all, and again, I don't think it's an A tier speedrun because it's so short, and most of it, like 95% of it, is just going through motions. The rest of it is just figuring out your upgrade route, because the amount of enemies you kill and what you collect will influence that. So, world record, I knocked off a few seconds just changing that up to make it so that you get the laser without sitting and grinding for a while. But it's not difficult at all. It's one of those games where touching enemies doesn't kill you, it's only touching their projectiles, but it's really good graphics, good sound. Again, it's due for more attention, I think, because there's only 2 of us have ever ran it. And again, it's a game that you could easily run no warps for or do other categories. Really underrated game. Really beautiful. What else we got? Well, Kensington. What can I say about Kensington? If you know me, you know it's one of my very favourite speedruns. You know it's going in the S tier. So, Kensington is literally one of the few games on this list that goes in the S tier and the S plus tier. Graphics and sound are perfect. It is difficult, but it's accessible because you've got continues. If you play it casually, you'll love it because you've got all different stages you can look at to get different upgrades. You can explore, there are training segments. And this is a game where you get to the top in this one and you feel so good. It's definitely one of the NES hard level speedruns, even though there aren't that many of us who've done it. And Sacrion and I and ZG have pushed the time down now to 5:47. But again, it's a game where you can do a run, you can get extra health upgrades and medicine cabinets to save on dying. You can use a defense posture on a lot of screens to get rid of enemies. So it doesn't take that much effort. It took maybe, a week for me to learn and get a decent time in. And Kensington currently is the most popular game that's never been in a Master 15 or a Master 8. So suffice to say, at some point it will be in a race. And it's a beautiful race game as well, because you can gamble on so many little things that save half a second, or a couple of seconds. Or you can just play very straight-laced and get a decent, 6:50, 7-minute time without doing too much. Lots of mashing and stabbing on the bosses, so the lava fly is a really good challenge. And even in my 550, I'm only doing double hits on the lava fly, and Sacrion is doing treble hits. So that tells you just how high the skill ceiling is in this game. That even at the 550 level, there are things you can optimize further. There's lots of different optimization with the movement. You can route out to get extra health on your way because you're killing certain amounts of enemies. And because a lot of the game is screens, like transition screens, you can set piece it a lot. It's really good for save state practice. But because it's only a 6-minute speedrun, you're never going to sink too much time into it. So it's easy to get good quickly. And again, Kensington is one of those games it feels like NES runners would really enjoy. I can't speak for Sacrion or anyone else, but I was grinding for about 8 weeks to get a sub 550, and I stopped because I got 550.000 and I was just defeated. My soul was destroyed. And I'm going to come back eventually and get that sub 550 and get the world record, but this is one of those rare games that where you push, it pushes back very hard. It's like Castle of Illusion, it's like Time Caper. You really have to dig deep on this one. JKL is actually going to be picking it up for a 12-hour challenge this year, so I'm going to be fascinated to see what he does with it. And it's a game where it rewards aggression, it rewards learning, and it makes you grow as a speedrunner. I only touched this after 7 years speedrunning, but I'm that much stronger now. If you only ever want to play one Master System game, I would say Kensington is the one you want to pick. Because It's just such a good speedrun. Now, the most recent game I've been running is Dane and Jungle Fighter. I'm going to put that for the first game on the list in the D tier. Now, one of the Master System legends to the Argwin, who was a former Castle of Illusion world record holder, has run this game, but I'm only the third person to touch it. And I'm going for world record right now, and I'll be able to get that, but my goodness, I've been angry at this game. I don't get too angry so often, but this is one of those games that makes me want to just explode. It is badly programmed. The boss fights are an RNG nightmare. The amount of times I've reset over an input being eaten or missing something by a couple of frames, it is very infuriating. And it's a shame because it's kind of like Kensington. There's a lot of set pieces to it. There's an experience system. You've got some routing with potions to be revived on bosses. But the problem is, if you game over on Danon, there are no continues. It's a hard game over. And there are manipulations on a couple of the bosses, but there's no way to guarantee them being perfect. So, literally, the first boss in this game will gaslight you until you're red in the face. And you will think that you know what you're doing, and it will suddenly just kill you out of nowhere, and it takes a long time to realise it's the game, it's not you. So, there are some people out there who will have a knack for this game. There are some who are like me, who are stubborn enough that they won't care about the jank and they'll want to conquer it. And yes, it feels good when you do, but even when you're at that world record level, it drives you mental, and it's not something I could recommend. So a few of you out there will enjoy it, but it's one of those games where you'll get a good time, and then you won't really feel the joy afterwards. You'll be more relieved and wanting to move on. Like, if you want to get a time, it is not difficult at all to get a 9-minute, 10-minute time, because there are various safeties you can do. There's lots of health everywhere. In that regard, it's not terrible, but also it's got a small window for improving, because you either end up like 10 minutes, or you end up at a high 8 minutes because you're leveling up too much, or you end up in the mid-8s because you're not leveling up at all but you got lucky with the bosses, or you end up at the lower minutes because you go for everything and get it. There's no real in-between. You know, there's a lot of plateaus with this one. You'll get stuck in PB jail a lot. Not a game I could recommend. A game I could recommend, however, is Mercs. One of the most popular games this year. Where would I put Mercs? I don't think I can quite put Mercs in A tier. And I say that even though it's got some of the greatest Master System speedrunners on the board. Let me find it here. So we've got 24 runners. B-Trim's here, Fletcher's here, Izzy, JKL, Taco, Corbett, Radman, Rasmus, Smart Alec, me, Marceau, Alpha Nerd, 21 Sandwich, Arno, the 8-Bit Beast, Oreb. This is one of the most stacked leaderboards there is. And if you look at this here, Sandwich has got an 8.25.9, and he's pushed Corbett down to 8.24. And a year ago, the world record was like 8.30, 8.29. So someone is pushing Corbett all the way in this game. It really is very difficult to optimize. There's a lot of lag management with this one, so you can get a perfectly decent time. Like, I spent half a day and got 8.42 out of nowhere because I've played the Genesis version. But you'll look at your PB and you'll look at somebody else's run and you'll think, what am I doing wrong? It's very hard to divine that. So some people will gel naturally with this game. I know JKL loves this one. Some people will probably look at it and fail to see the appeal because, especially if you're from the NES, you've got a game like Jackal, which is much more on edge and much more execution based, and you come to Mercs and it's just like, where's the beef? You know, if you want SMS points, wonderful game, take a day or two, get a decent time, be done with it. I personally am probably coloured by the fact that I ran the Genesis version. So what I will say, if you like Mercs, I highly recommend the Genesis version, which is again one of the very few S plus tier games I would say. I can't speak highly enough of that game. But Mercs on the Master System, if you enjoy running guns, or if you enjoy lag optimization or technical stuff like that, you'll enjoy this. If you want something to get quick and dirty SMS points, you'll enjoy this. Otherwise, it's not one of the absolute highlights, but it is definitely a well-made game. It's not terribly stressful to do. There's some charm to it. So it's a B tier. Underrated game, however, that goes in the B tier as well, Montezuma's Revenge. Not a game many of you will have heard of, because it was originally a PC game, I think. I certainly didn't know it existed until I saw Redman playing it this year. But Montezuma's Revenge is a really, really beautiful little character platformer. And currently the SRC board is split up into individual levels. So the current main category on the SMS is level 1, which is 2.5 minutes. And it's a really nice little platformer. It's really well made. There's no real input eating. It's sharp, it's responsive, there's a few different routing options. And it's one of those, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, where you can go as hard as you want, but it never feels onerous to run. It just feels fun and enjoyable. And again, I can definitely see a few levels of this being in the Master Race at some point in future. It's one of those where you don't need much learning, you can just play and play. It's just a solid short platformer, you know. And it's one of those where you get a top time, you'll have insurance on the SMS points. So let's have a look. We've only got 4 runners so far, so at the moment you'll only get a max of 1500 for doing it. But as more and more people do it, if a good run, you'll get more points added on every time someone runs it. I couldn't put it any higher than B tier because it doesn't take that long to get a good time. And then the optimizations, once you do that, are very annoying. So my run, I've got a death at the end, which is very silly and cost me a few seconds. But apart from that, it's like, it's easy to be satisfied with a decent run. It doesn't push you too hard, but it's a good run. Now let me find High School Kimagumi. Here it is. High School Kimagumi is another of these character platformers, but it's not one many of you will know, because it was Japanese only. And this is one of the boards that Radman has created recently, so shout outs to him. The other 2 character platformers, Captain Silver and Montezuma's, I put in B tier. This is definitely just a C tier run. Because again, it's not too difficult to get a run, but getting a top run in this is difficult and stressful. Because you touch one enemy once, you die, that's it. And there's a bit of randomness to that. And also the menuing's a little bit finicky, especially if you're playing in Japanese. So this is just like a weird little anime game where you're going around a school collecting items to get rid of some bullies. And it's charming and fun for like the first half hour, but then you keep resetting and it gets really annoying really quickly. So because the run is only 3.5 minutes, it's not terrible. But it's one of those where you'll get some run that's got a couple of mistakes and you'll think, oh, that's good enough. Like the world record, I missed an item grab and lost a couple of seconds, but it's still good enough. It doesn't make you want to push further. So it's not as bad as Danum, where you think, I want to be done with this, but it doesn't make you want to keep running it. Definitely one of those games where only a specialist on the Master System would want to run it. And I mean, if you're into anime games or like Japan cultured games, this could be something enjoyable for you, but it's definitely one of maybe the 50 or 60 most, what would the word be? Like it's in the middle of the bullseye, it's not something that everyone would want to run. Now, there was another game I was thinking of, similar to that, which is Back to the Future 3. How would I classify Back to the Future 3? If I compare it to Montezuma's and High School Kimigami. So Back to the Future 3 is a very silly little arcade platformer with 3 stages. And the first stage is just, a couple of seconds of learning movements to get past a horse. The second stage is an isometric pie throwing stage, which is about as fun as it sounds. And the final stage is a train, which is kind of cool once you get the hang of it. I think it's a B tier run because there's not much learning to it at all. It feels really good once you get good at it. And it's the sort of game where it's going to be easy for you to get good at 2 of the 3 stages, and then you're going to get to the pie stage and you're going to think, do I want to grind this or not? That's really going to make the difference for you whether you want to keep grinding it beyond just a decent time. But it's got good, respectable graphics and good sound. It's similar to Montezuma's. It's got that character to it, but it's not something that you're going to come back to time and time again. So it's worth it for SMS points because it's so short. And it's not janky as much as it's got some field culture in terms of how it works and like what you do. But once you've learned it, it's very one note. It's like a high C tier, low B tier run. Let's look at WWF Steel Cage Challenge. This is an interesting one because recently Oreb got the world record down to 17 seconds, so it's overtaken Ease as the second fastest run on the Master System. And even though it's a sport game, it's very accessible because you're literally just winning one match of wrestling. You can either do a regular ring or a steel cage. I'm no good at sports games, but I managed to get a run of this in like 40 minutes. Not a good run, but a run. I don't know that I would say it's janky as much as I guess if you understand wrestling, you will understand the controls fairly well. But otherwise, for me personally, it felt very similar to games like Street Fighter, where as an outsider, it feels like you're just kick, 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 or trying to trick the AI into going out of the ring. It was fun though, certainly. Um, Doing a full run of this, like the full championship, I think that would be more interesting as the main category. Or if you were doing a race of it. It's definitely something anyone looking to do SMS points should be doing because it's so quick. But it's very one-dimensional. I think it's a little bit below Back to the Future because there's just so little to it. You almost feel like, what was the point of that? At least with something like Ease, you can do a bit more optimizing to it, and like it shows better in a marathon. Still, if you want to do your SMS point grinding, then Steel Cage is right up there because it's so short. And it's a sport game, if you want to do a quote-unquote sport game, then there are going to be lots of short ones like that are up your alley, and they're not too culture fair. You don't have to learn lots for it. Another game like that, Putt and Putter. Another really short game. It's only 1 minute 20 because you play the practice round. And it's just isometric mini golf. So it's not even as bad as a regular golf game. So if you're not really into golf at all, Putt and Putter's a good option for you. Decently popular leaderboard as well. Let me see how many are on there. 11 people. JKL's done it. Peanut's done it. JFred, Alpha Nerd. Lots of good runners. Worth lots of points, and it doesn't take that much to do manipulations. It's only 6 holes, but there is also a 1-player mode with 18 holes if you want to do that. Mini golf certainly isn't for everyone. I found it a little bit boring, but I always enjoy playing golf games the quote-unquote correct way, using the right clubs and stuff, so I'm the exception for that. I think I would put it in A tier, except for the fact that it's such a short main category, but it's definitely a B tier run. Anyone who enjoys golf is going to enjoy this. It's good for SMS points if you want to do a bunch of short games. This fits the bill. And it's fun and it's easy enough to do because most of it isn't learning, it's just, you know, you make a mistake or a hole, you say, I'll do it differently next time. Another good golf game that I think is underrun is Sega World Tournament Golf. Now, golf games are divisive because a lot of people don't really want to go to the faff of using one wooden putter only. And a lot of people do that because they want to get a quote-unquote top time. Now, Sega World Tournament Golf is interesting because the entire 18 holes is on the same bitmap, so there is no out of bounds. And anyone out there who's ran any number of golf games knows how annoying out of bounds is. Yes, there are water hazards, but it's a very quick game. So this one, you've got 2 courses. Each of them is 18 holes, but in each of them you can get around in 7 minutes flat, very easily. So actually, I think this is a high B tier. I wouldn't put it in A tier because it's a specialist game. Not everyone is going to like golf. But out of all the golf games on the Master System, I would say this is the best one. Because, again, you've got the whole thing on a bitmap. You can actually go off course to get to the hole if you want to. You can tackle it any number of ways. It's also got probably the least annoying control system. We'll get to the control systems in golf a little bit later on. But it's very quick and not a game I'd heard of until I started speedrunning, actually. Underrated. So Sega World Tournament Golf is a B tier. Let's go to Great Golf US. Now, Great Golf US is definitely not a B tier game. I don't know whether I would place it in C tier or D tier. I think I should be kind and place it C. Because it's not janky as much as it's got its own character. So Great Golf US is one of the slowest golf games. There's a lot of loading screens. It's got weird perspective where you've got to sort of translate in your head the difference between what you see on the map and where you're aiming. The putting is absolutely bizarre, and most people who've played this game just don't like it and want to get a time and move on. There's a couple of people like JFred and Zetox who like this game and have ground it down to really impressive times, but they're the exception. And for 18 holes, most people will be looking at 25 to 30 minutes. So it's one of those games where you almost regret playing it because you think, oh, it's golf, therefore it's easy because you can't die. But then you finish your run and you're thinking, that wasn't really worth my time. You know, I could have played 2 or 3 better games in that time. So if you want points, it's a good option because you can get one run or two runs and be done with it. But it's not the best golf game out there. What I would say is better is the Japanese version, which is a completely different game. It's also a B-tier game. So Great Golf Japan is isometric, but it's a fast and fluid golf game. It's closer to Sega World Tournament Golf. And what's interesting about that one is that J-Golf won't actually let you use a club that is longer than the remaining distance to the hole. So let's say you're 160 yards to the pin, it won't let you use a club higher than a 4-iron, which makes it slightly easier because you're not having to decide whether you want to play one-wood strats. It's literally just use the top club and go from there. The putting is a bit more intuitive. There's a little bit of kind of IQ test or culture with the bunkers and how to spin the ball, but it's nothing terrible. And it feels just better than Grey Golf. It feels more fun. You know, if you're going to put one of those two into a race, I would definitely recommend J Golf. And if you're going to do one of these for a stream, J Golf is going to be the more rewarding because the holes are a bit better constructed as well. Like, Great Golf is okay in theory, but it's kind of got the problem where its perspective is trying to be Wii Golf and 8-bit golf at the same time. Whereas with J Golf, you can more clearly see what you're doing, and it's easy to know what you've done wrong. I mean, it's not the shortest game because it's like 20 minutes, but you play that one and you feel like you can improve easily without working too hard. It's definitely one of the games that I think more people will run in future. And if you enjoy any sort of sport game, this is one of the better ones you would enjoy. Another one that's really good, which is underrepresented so far, is Golfomania. Now, Golfomania is interesting because it's one of those that if you've owned a Master System, you're probably familiar with casually. And when you play this game, it's got an interesting control system because to get high power on your shots, you've got to hit the ball within a very, very narrow window. So the one thing with this game, it's common to miss completely and then hit a perfect shot, and miss completely and hit a perfect shot. But in its favour, it's very intuitive. It doesn't feel as testing as Great Golf somehow. It's easier to get into it. It's easier to enjoy it casually. I wouldn't quite put it in the B tier though, because again, if you struggle with timing, control is going to be really difficult for you with this game. And yes, you can make your reaction window wider by using a lower club, but you're not really making a dent in your time then because you're going to be shooting less distance each shot, you're just getting less whiff shots. It's a good game though, it's again like 20 minutes. It doesn't take much to learn because there's only one course. It feels fairer. Again, it's Great Golf suffers because it feels unfair. You know, something like J Golf is sort of the standard. Sega World Tournament Golf's a bit better than that because it's more intuitive. Golfomania is decent as well because it doesn't punish you. So if you're looking for a golf game, I would recommend these two. If you're very into golf, then these two are going to be more in your alley. Another sport game that I've played recently is Slapshot. Slapshot is... I don't think it can be above B tier because the main category is score 5 goals. So it's similar to a lot of sports games where winning the game is literally going to be boring because you're just scoring one goal and timing out. But I found a perfect manipulation for Slapshot where you can score 5 perfect goals. So at least you've got the option of just playing it casually or going for the perfect manip. But even then, I think it's definitely just a C tier speedrun. If you want to spend an hour grinding this, it's a 1 or 2 minute speedrun. It's great for SMS points. But once you've done it, there's not really much more to say. You'll either enjoy grinding your time down, or you'll be done. Still, it's a decent run, it's fun, it's enjoyable. A similar one to that is, if I can find it, World Soccer. That's again a C tier run. So World Soccer is the horizontal soccer, the one that you'll have played casually, similar to Golfomania. And exactly like Slapshot, there's a perfect manipulation if you want to go for it. Otherwise, it's very easy to play casually and just, spend half an hour or an hour, score 5 goals, be done with it, enjoy the charm of the thing, but that's about it. So, it's not going to light the world on fire, but it's a solid little game. It's the sort of game that might make a one-off appearance in a race one time because it's a short novelty goal. A little bit of jank to the controls in these older sports games as well, take a bit of getting used to, but it's nothing absolutely terrible. And Slapshot, for example, I played Blades of Steel for the NES Big 20, and then once I played that, Slapshot felt pretty comfortable. So there's always an analog somewhere down the line. Like, I don't know, maybe if you've played one of the NES games like Black Box Soccer, and then you play World Soccer, you'll probably feel a bit more at home. So these sorts of basic level games on Sega, they tend to be a little bit more simply programmed than the NES games. So you can get away with a bit more. Still a decent option for points. Great Soccer, very similar. It's another solid C-tier game. Great Soccer is a card game, and it's vertical soccer, so it's kind of the same but different, and there's not been a perfect manipulation found yet. So it's a little bit more organic. I found a way to do like a few simple goals just by walking it in. So it's good for if you want to be lazy and just do a quote-unquote speedrun. And if you want to push, there's plenty of time available left. We've got 6, 7 runners, I think, so it's decent for points, but that's about it. It doesn't have massive depth to it. Having said that, I don't really know of any soccer games that do have massive depth at the 8-bit level. Who knows? But it's a good little run. Another sport game is Super Tennis. Where am I going to put Super Tennis in this list? So Super Tennis is one of those games where you play it casually and you think, what the hell's going on? And I literally, when I played this when I was younger, never won a single game. So I'm the great Master System speedrunner now, blah blah blah. 20 years ago, I couldn't win a game from this thing. It's janky. Once you get used to it though, it's fun and it's fast. Again, this feels like if you've played NES Tennis, this will feel like a step down in difficulty. So nothing out of the ordinary, nothing scary. Fun as well because you can be as aggressive as you want, or you can just play it safe. So Oreb in the world record got really good at doing shots from a weird position. I couldn't do those as much, so my time was a lot lower, but I still managed a decent completion. It's one of those games where it's worth playing for points, but it is literally just smashing somebody 6-love at tennis. Now, Oreb and Alphanerd have played Wimbledon, Tennis Ace, and more in-depth games. I'm sure you can see what their runs are like for those. They're a little bit more involved. So these basic sports games on the Master System are like a gateway drug. If you like these, then explore the more complicated ones. And if they're not your cup of tea, then hey, you've done a speed run and it's not been that difficult because there's no learning. Again, it's simple enough that you can just do it out the box. Have we got any more sport games here? Let's have a look. Not exactly sport, but we've got California games. We've got California Games 1 and we've got California Games 2. I think both of these games, we should treat them as a pair. Solid C-tier games. So California Games 1 and 2 are minigame collections. Again, ports to everything in the sun, so you might have seen it on the NES or Genesis. And because of the way speedruns work, the speedrun category is just to finish all the games as quickly as you can. And they're both brilliant because you can do them in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, without much effort. But that also limits them as speedruns, because the only optimization is tiny little things that either feel very frustrating, or take a bit of technical knowledge, or end up feeling like a lottery. So California Games 1, the BMX level, if you're careful or you're lucky or you're both, you can smack your head on the first go and you can save a cycle. I managed to do that in my first run and got a PB and I never touched it again. So it can't go above C tier because there's no depth to the grind. It's just like you do a run and see where you fall. California Games 2 almost feels like a knockoff version of California Games 1 because there's only 4 games and only one of them, the snowboarding, really makes any difference at all. But it again feels kind of mysterious. It doesn't feel like you can understand what you're doing. You just lose a second or two and that's it. But they're both really good for SMS point grinding. Some people might want to do the high scores for them. They're certainly fun and attractive games visually, they're just not really brilliant speedruns. Let's look at a homebrew. Extreme Volleyball Infernal League, which was going to be in the Sega brew that wasn't really interested in by anyone. So Extreme Volleyball is a sample game demoed for the SMS. The full game is on Steam, but the SMS version is a good C-tier game. It's very quick. It's only 4 minutes long. It's kind of like volleyball meets Mario Kart, and there's little manipulations you can do. You can be very aggressive with it. But there's nothing much to it. Again, it's just one of those games where you work out what you're doing, you do it, you decide if you want to improve, and that's it. So it's good for points because it's quick, but there's no real depth to it. It's a shame, really, but it's very well made, and obviously, homebrews, it's brilliant to see people making new games for the Master System. It's one of those where if you like sports games, this is going to be for you. If you like homebrews, this is for you. But it's not going to appeal to everyone or to most people. Nothing difficult, though. Let's go on to Do the Same, which is a puzzle homebrew game. Now, if you've played any Game Boy games, you'll know the game Brain Drain. And Do the Same is very similar to that. So it's like a tile shifting puzzle. And you've got to match 16 puzzles by shifting tiles around, rotating them and changing position. It's a fun little game. It takes like 3 or 4 minutes. Again, there's no real learning to it, it's just working out what you're doing and understanding it. And it's a really good little game because it's not terribly long, and puzzle games tend to be among the most divisive for speedrunners. Not many people go hard into them. I think actually Do the Same is going to be in the B tier. Because if you love puzzles, you're going to want to optimize this down to the last nubbins, down to the last few seconds, and you'll also then be interested in Brain Drain, or in playing the Atari Jaguar homebrew, which has got like hundreds of puzzles. Really beautiful graphics and sound as well, so really enjoyable to play. It's only got a few runners so far, but again, a game that if you're interested in trying out puzzles, this would be for you. Another homebrew on the puzzle front is Heroes vs. Demons. Now, Heroes Against Demons is JKL's favourite homebrew. Oreb recently nicked the world record off him, and I think it's a really cool game as well because it's a Puyo Puyo style match 3 puzzler. But the one thing with this run is that if you're not brilliant at it like me, it takes 45 minutes. And also, it's one of those games where you will glaze over. Even if you've had all the coffee in the world, you'll glaze over and you'll lose time and you'll feel frustrated. So, I don't know that I could put it in B tier. No, I don't think it can be a B tier game because so many people will enjoy puzzle games of any sort, but they will find this a bit much. Like, I love Lemmings, but even I found this game a bit much. And it's one of those games where it's got the intention of a damage mechanic where you can level up different ways, but you never quite seem to have enough money to get the extra levels. So it's frustrating like that. And you end up trying to rush, or you end up trying to overplan combos. It's difficult to feel comfortable with this game. It always feels like you're sort of on the edge of it. So some people will probably like that, but a lot of people are probably going to be put off by that. So if you're a specialist in puzzle games, this is going to be for you. It's not janky as much as it is difficult to get into, but it's definitely worth looking at. I think it's more sort of game where it would benefit you to play it casually and just enjoy it for a while, and if you ever get to completing it, then hey, do a speedrun. But it's not something you should look at with the intent of spending time to learn, because if it gets frustrating for you, you're going to have a really bad time. Similarly, we're going to look at Lemmings, which was my very first Master System speedrun. Now, I absolutely adore Lemmings, but I have to admit, it's not for everyone. So the fun levels on Lemmings is a half an hour speedrun, and it's kind of the inverse of Heroes Against Demons. So Heroes Against Demons is a game where you've got to be bang on the concentration every single second, and yet if you get into that flow state with it, it is mindless because you can switch off. Now Lemmings is the opposite because you've got to be very well aware of all the different steps you're taking constantly. You've got to remember what Lemmings are doing off screen. You've got to remember what's coming up ahead. You've got to decide whether you're going to be aggressive or risky or take it easy on a level coming up. And so mentally it's completely different because it's sort of like a piano recital. There's no RNG at all, but you still feel drained after doing a run because there's just so much to remember. And if you get to the top level of it, if you want to go for world record, there's a lot of defense posturing you've got to do. You know, if you miss a trick by 10 frames and you've suddenly got a whole bunch of lemmings that are going to die, you've really got to know what you're doing. Because it's easy to get flustered and to make mistakes with this one. Now, having said that, there's a lot of lemmings that's better than Heroes Against Demons because it's scripted. And the levels are a really good example of problem space where you can tackle it your own way. You know, a lot of the time you don't have to save everyone, and there are lots of different options for how you handle certain things. It's just like get from one crunch point to another to another. But I think a lot of people, even speedrunners who love decently long games, are going to be put off by this one because of the amount of learning or brain work they're going to have to do. So if you want something that's going to improve your science in speedrunning, your tassing skills, your precision. This is a really good run. And I think it's not really an exaggeration to say if I never speedrun Lemmings, I wouldn't be the speedrunner I am. Because I had to do so much work on it. And it taught me so much, it gave me so much of execution. But after a while, it gets boring because there is no RNG, and you'll get to 98% perfect, and you'll think this is not really fun to grind because there's nothing pushing you like in Kensington or in Castle of Illusion. It is literally just you against the brick wall. So if you love puzzle games, I think you'll enjoy it. Again, it's 30 levels, but literally 15 of them you can cheese without doing any work at all. So it's just how much work you want to put into it. And it's the sort of game that you will look at as a speedrun, and your initial reaction will be, ooh, that doesn't sound too much fun, but I promise you, if you give this one a chance and you get into it, it's really fun. It's got top-notch graphics and music. You can pause and think it over. There's a lot of options to it. It's underrated, so I would love to see more people run Lemmings. Good puzzle game. Another puzzle game that is up there is petaQ Animal. Now this one, how do I rate this as a speedrun? Because this is a lot more popular than any of the 3 puzzle games we've discussed previously, but it's kind of a lottery. And you can see the Tech Toy logo here. That's not a good sign. But this is kind of like a Puyo Puyo Match 3 puzzle game, except you are matching animals to food, and you're trying to make combos to send junk over to the other side. And it sounds good until you realise that the only way to win is just to spam pieces like the Dickens and get more combos over before the opponent combos you. And the problem is that the opponent has the same piece set as you. And if you get wild tiles, you're in trouble because eventually they're going to get the same wild tiles and throw stuff back at you, so there's like a snapback effect. And there's no way to avoid it because you can't slow down because it's a speedrun. So it's one of those games where it's easy enough to throw stuff at the wall and get a completion, but it doesn't really feel like you've achieved anything even if you get world record. It's just like, yes, the graphics are beautiful, it's an attractive game, but as a speedrun, it's not anything brilliantly special. You know, if you love puzzle games, you'll love this. I don't think I can put it less than B tier though, because it is much more popular than Lemmings. And if you're good at that sort of game where you're throwing down pieces without thinking, like playing blitz chess, then you'll really enjoy this. And it's really good for SMS points because it doesn't take much to get a run. But it's certainly not anything above a B tier because it's kind of the opposite of Lemmings. Lemmings has 0 RNG. petaQ Animal is purely RNG because you can do everything correct and still get stiffed. Still, it's a good speedrun. It's like, what, 7-8 minutes on average, so worth playing. Have we got any more puzzle games here? Let's have a look. Sega Chess is kind of a puzzle. Let's look at Sega Chess. So, I would be misadvertising to you if I said anything other than it's a C-tier speedrun. Because at the beginner level, you're literally just tricking the computer into a 5-move checkmate. It takes 1 minute. The one thing I will say for Sega Chess, if you do that, then stick around for the few minutes afterwards on the victory screen because the music is epic. Matt Furness did some of his best work on the Master System, and this is no exception. Wonderful music for that. And if you're a chess player, you'll enjoy playing the top level of this. I played the Grand Chess Master level, and I had a fantastic game with it. It was really fun. But as a speedrun, it's one of those where you'll feel like you're doing it for numbers or for points, rather than for its own interest. And You could create some interesting category, like promote your A porn, but it will feel like a stretch or like an artificial. It's not like you can create a category that has any merit beyond creating a category. So it's one of the shortest runs on the Master System because it's under a minute. Something that you can definitely run to get a run of, but nothing more than that. We've got any more puzzle games here? We've got Columns. So Columns is similar to Baku because it's match 3, and you're literally just throwing pieces down like the Dickens. And again, Oreb has recently nabbed the world record in this. Very impressive run. I'll admit, I don't understand how top runners get so good at these games. It's one of those things similar to racing games where there's like a genre block and you can't understand it. You're either good at it or you're not. And given that I'm good at blazing blocks, that might sound very strange. But these sorts of games don't quite gel with me. And it's not really an A-tier run because it's just port into everything. There's no charm beyond the fact that it's a quote-unquote puzzle game, and you can shortcut just by throwing pieces down. So it's good for doing a quote-unquote speedrun, a meme speedrun for getting points. But you're playing the lottery if you do this, and if you want to grind for a top time, good luck to you. But I wouldn't say there's much fun to it, apart from being able to customize the jewel set, or, for being able to play while you interact with your chat. That's about it. B tier. Have we got any more puzzle games here? Snail Maze is kind of a puzzle. Let's look at Snail Maze. So obviously, Snail Maze is the original Master System game, the one built into the BIOS in the US and Europe. How would I describe Snail Maze? It's interesting because everyone's played this casually and it seems really fun. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, mazes, they're really difficult. But then you speedrun this, and we created OBS overlays. So in OBS Studio mode, you can see the path you're meant to take. And you would think that makes it really easy. But it's still really awkward because the snail controls like he's had crack. And he's shaky, and he's janky. And it's fun jank. It's not like you're fighting the game or feeling angry. It's just it doesn't control like you would expect it to. So you do one run and you think, well, how am I going to improve that beyond more than a few seconds? And the world record, again, it looks like witchcraft. I don't know if the world record was done on a keyboard, but it is not the sort of game that you want to play on a controller for more than half an hour. It's wonderful as a speedrun just to get a run of, and because it's very top level Master System culture. So I would say it's B tier because it's good for points. And if you're good at maze games and if you're good at that technical movement, this will suit you down to the ground. But it's not something you would grind for more than a little while, and because it's such a one-note game, there are better maze games out there. Now, speaking of maze games, one of the most interesting games to me on the Master System is Alien Syndrome. Now, Alien Syndrome was a game I borrowed from a friend as a kid a lot, and it was legendary in my house because we could not make it past the second level. My parents tried, I tried, we could not do it. And then I looked at this a number of years ago before speedrunning was as popular, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll look at that one day because of the map routing, thinking that would be a fun science project. And come to January this year, and I randomly, pure luck, find that there's a weapon upgrade for the final boss that nobody has found before. Which is crazy, because I have the craziest luck for finding silly things on the Master System that nobody has found before, and finding beautiful science. I have no right to find as much as I do. especially because I'm not a tasser. I don't have the skill. But even with that weapon upgrade on the final boss, this game is a nightmare. And I'm thinking, do I want to put it in D tier or F tier? And I think it has to go in F tier. Because this game will drive you insane. So it's fun, it's an arcade port, it's quintessential Sega, yes. Graphically, it's beautiful, it's got FM sound, it's aliens, it's really cool, but I'm the #1 ranked Master System speedrunner, and to get one completion of this game, it took me 659 attempts. Yeah, I completed it once, and I said never again. So if you want to go insane, this is the game for you. Mephistus has done a run of this because he's a legend. And I mentioned Red Pepper earlier. One of the most insane runs you'll ever see is his world record of this game. So I'm like a minute and change behind that because I had a few deaths, even with that weapon upgrade in the final stage. But if you want to go balls to the wall in this game, good luck, because that makes Alf look like a piece of cake. The collision is janky, you die constantly. If you die, you lose your weapon. If you lose your weapon, you're screwed for the boss. There's lag everywhere. It's unpredictable lag, so you can't tell when you're going to get hit by an enemy suddenly speeding up. This is not a bad game for a bit of fun, but this is one of the hardest speedruns I've ever done. So I will not recommend this to anyone unless you need to come after me as #1. And if you do, then I'll pour you a glass of whiskey, because you'll need it. Let's move on to a good maze game, which is Zillion. Now, Zillion is one of those games, if you know anything about the Master System casually, it's hailed as one of the greatest Master System games. It's compared to Metroid. It's based on an anime. I've watched the anime, it's wonderful, well worth your time. It's charming, it's pure Master System culture. It's everything you could want in a Master System game. And I'm wondering how to rank it on a tier list, because there are different categories for Zillion, and for that reason I can only rank it based on the category I've done, which is the glitch category, where you get an invincibility glitch, and you can play the rest of the game without any sort of damage issue. Now that category is sort of one note, because you can get a good time in a day, because most of what you're doing is learning the route and optimizing movement. But the good thing about that is that it makes it free to keep improving and not having a hard cap like a game over or deaths. But then if you want to graduate from that to the full run, you look at Chess Jerk's world record, that's actually like one of the oldest world records on the Master System. I think it's like 17 years he's had that. And no one has dared touch the run since. And I'm going to do a glitchless run at some point, but I'm not going for his world record. That would be one of the hardest things you could possibly do. But that's what makes this game so good, is that not only have you got these different categories, but you can level up with this. You can go from a normal run to a deathless run. You can look at saving time in the red area, in the blue area. You can always optimize your movement that little bit. And I think this is going to be an S tier run, because I can easily see top NES runners diving into this and having months and months of enjoyment, grinding out the improvements, improving their movement tech, improving their code reading tech. And it's also just a perfect game because you play it and there's never any stress from the design of it, from the coding of it. It's just beautifully made. It really is just a perfect game. You know, it's 20 odd minutes, so I'm not sure it would exactly fit a Master 8. If I do a Master 15, I would certainly consider putting it in, but I don't know how people feel about long goals. But you could also just do Rescue Champ and Apple. 8-Bit Beast has done a run where you rescue Champ and Apple and get the good ending. And there's a few categories with only a few runners, so it's easy for you to make a mark in this. Highly recommended. Everyone should look at playing Zillion. And again, you don't have to look at Chess Jerk's world record and go for that, but you can be inspired by that. And I am honestly surprised that Zillion has not got more attention in the last 20 years. It's that good. It's as good as Castle of Illusion. More people should be playing it. So that's the maze games. What more games have we got to deal with here? Let's have a look. Well, we've got Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is beautiful and wonderful. It's easily at least a B-tier run. So Bruce Lee was my favourite of the homebrew games from the Sega Brew. It is a conversion of the old computer game from the C64. And it's a little arcade platformer that takes 5 or 6 minutes. It's got some of the best graphics you'll ever see on the Master System. It's got beautiful music. It's short, it's simple. It just feels so good to play. And I wouldn't put it in the A tier because it's very short and sweet, but it's easily the top of the B tier. You know, if you like little character platformers, this is a game for you. If you're looking to get SMS points, you must play this game because it's so easy to get a good time and it feels so nice as well. And you can tell the love that the person has put into this game making it. It's so happy and it's kind of like Quartet, it feels good, you know? It's like a homage to the Master System. If it was a longer game, if they did more levels, it would definitely be up in the A or the S tiers. You know, the only reason I'm putting it in B is because you can be done with it in a few hours. But that also makes it perfect for all of you out there who are looking for good games to run. Let's look at Alf. I know a lot of you out there will be thinking that Alf is going to go down here. I'm not going to put it there. I'm not going to put it in the D tier either. I'm going to put it in the C tier. And a lot of you are going to be surprised by that. But there are many, many worse games than Alf. So it's difficult, yes. It took me about 150 attempts to complete a full run. But if you're not into the full game, you can play Buck Percent. It's kind of like the SMB1 of the Master System. And yes, I'm partly saying that because Darbian has got world records in both of those. But also because the jank makes it so that it's got an achievement ceiling to it. You know, the wonky belt scrolling means that you've got to react quickly. And it's good for, like, testing yourself and improving yourself and having mental strength. You know, I've got a blooper on my channel where I died literally going onto the moon. And I had to resist swearing at that point. That was stressful. But that develops you as a speedrunner. And there is some jank to it, I'll admit. The collision's a bit off. But it's a 6-minute platformer. What do you want? You know? Not every platformer can be golden and perfect. It's charming, it's fun. It's one of those games where you'll play it and you'll think, oh, this is the worst game you'll ever play. But I've played worse. And I'm glad that we don't live in a timeline where it got as much trash as ET on the Atari. It's the sort of game where you'll play it and you'll enjoy the joke and you'll kind of get into it. And Kozix has run this, and he's a top NES runner. And if Kozix can do it, so can you. It's definitely a game that needs more people trying it. It's similar to tech-toy games in terms of it has a bad reputation, but it's not a bad speedrun. There's some tech to it. You can be careful with it. You don't have to death warp. It's a fun game. So we mentioned tech-toy. Let's look at X-Men Mojo World. Now, if I've put Alf in the C tier, X-Men has to go in the C tier as well. It's definitely easier than Alf. You can finish a run of this in 15 minutes. I personally didn't care for this one. Something about it just felt wonky. Now, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it just felt like it was going to be painful to grind. You know, getting to a mid-5, yes, that's fine. But this is the sort of game I think where top NES runners would either run screaming for the hills, or they would dive deep into the jank and love it. So JKL's got the world record in this one. It's the sort of game where if you get past the jank to it, there is tech, there is optimization to it, it does feel good. It's just not going to be for everyone. So it's the sort of game it would be easy for a lot of you out there to reject for SMS grinding, or you could just do one run and be done with it. It's kind of a silly run. Most of the time you are literally just flying through stages doing nothing. So there's a bit of a lottery feeling to when you get PBs or not. I think most of you out there will enjoy it a bit more than me. I got to a mid-5x and said never again because just not my cup of tea. But a lot of people would find it good for getting down to a decent point level, similar to Mercs, I think. Just it's one of those where there's a bit less work to it, and I think Alf is a game where a lot of people get the joke or can enjoy it. X-Men is sort of the opposite of that, where a lot of people think it's funny, but then you play it and it's like, oh, this isn't really funny, it's just badly made. So C tier game. I'll tell you what isn't a C tier game though, if I can find it, is Castellar Button. So this is another of those games where you look at the words tech toy, you think this can't be any good. But this is a really, really good speedrun. And this one has the distinction similar to Quartet that I mentioned earlier. I never once got frustrated with the controls in this one. I never once experienced lag. I never once got irritated grinding this game. It is extremely underrated. Not just because it's not well known, but because there's a lot of interesting tech in this one. So you've got 200 HP, and if you do it correctly, you can literally get down to 1 HP and survive on 1 HP in the first 3 stages, so that you can take a death in the 3rd stage where you would need to anyways, and save time, and save a couple of deaths. And if that's not cool, I don't know what is. You know, there's a little bit of lag to it, the graphics look a little bit off, but you can preserve speed in the final stage, you can gamble on going cycles on the library. It's really well made. And both B-Trim and Rasmus have run this, so 2 of the former greatest of all time, that tells you all you need to know. This would be another of those games that will be in a marathon at some point, and would be really good for separating the field. Because you can gamble on getting through without dying, or you can play it safe. And again, it's, you know, if we talk about SMS culture, SMS was obviously huge in Brazil. So for that reason alone, it has to go in A tier, because it is a quintessential Master System game, even if we've never heard of it. But it's got that sort of slightly mirror universe feeling to it. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. There's just something really good about this game, and I really hope more people run it. It's just very solid, it's easy to get a good time in, grinding for a world record level time isn't stressful at all, shouldn't take you long, looks can be deceiving. Another tactile game, another Brazilian port, Street Fighter 2. That's going to go down in the C tier with X-Men, because it is literally just punch and kick your way to victory. There's virtually no strategy to this one. I know a lot of people find fighting games love or hate. This is just one of those where you play it and you almost finish on your first go and you're thinking it can't be that easy, but it really is. I'm no good at fighting games, I never have been. I finished this on my second try. Somehow I was 2 minutes behind everyone else, I don't know how. But it's incredibly easy just to get a run. And it's got that sort of jank charm to it where you look at the graphics and you're thinking, surely this can't be on the Master System, but it is. And it lags, but it feels like you understand why it's lagging. You're not cursing it, you're just taking pity on it. Because getting Street Fighter 2 on the Master System is sort of an achievement in itself. So, if you want to do a tour of all the interesting sites of the Master System, you've got to put this on your list. It's silly, it's really one of those games that people think of when they think of jank. But it's a decent speedrun, you can pick your character, you can do a little bit of optimization, or you can just pull it out in a marathon as a party trick. It's not terrible. We got any more Brazilian games on here? I think there was one. No, but we have got Trivial Pursuit coming to the end here. So Trivial Pursuit is really, really hilarious. C tier again. Can't go higher than C tier because there's nothing to it. But imagine playing a board game where the computer says, "Did you get the right answer?" And instead of actually typing in the answer, like something like Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, you literally just say, "Yes, I got the right answer." And that's it. And so all it comes down to is rolling dice. Which is good because it makes it an incredibly easy game to speedrun. The whole thing can be over in 6 minutes. There's no skill to it. Again, it's got some cool music and cool graphics. And that's about it. It's one of those where you'll do it once and you'll think that was a fun half an hour, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. And if you enjoy the kind of the shtick of doing board games like that, then you'll end up moving on into things like Jeopardy on the NES or Wheel of Fortune, games that have got calculators or strategy to them. But if you want something that has that sort of vibe, but doesn't have any of that effort, then Trivial Pursuit is going to be the game for you. And if you want to be really fancy, play in French. Because in theory, if you get all the correct questions, French is faster. So, we're talking about gaming games, let's talk about parlour games. Parlour games is interesting because you've got three choices of game. You've got World Bingo, or you've got darts, or you've got billiards. So, for that reason, I feel like parlour games is at the top of the C tier. I wouldn't put it in B tier because there's not enough to it. But any of you out there who've run Magic Darts on the NES, parlour games darts will be similar. If you've run any pool games, the billiards game is similar. You can play straight, you can play 9-ball. So it's one of those like Golfomania where you can pick up and play. There's no learning required. There's a little bit of charm to it because it's family coded. World Bingo could be an interesting game to optimise. One of those games where if you're looking for something silly or easy for SMS points, it's a good choice. But it's more just like it happens to be a video game. In the same way as Trivial Pursuit, there's nothing outstanding about it. You know, it's a little bit obscure, a little bit not for everyone. And I'm just looking at Columns and Baku Baku and I'm feeling slightly strange to put those in B tier, whereas Parlour Games has gone in C tier. But inevitably they're going to be a little bit more popular, so I think that makes sense. And to be fair, games like Billiards and Darts have a little bit more jank to them, because you've actually got to either know what you're doing or get lucky. So yeah. Casino games is similar. So casino games, you've got blackjack, poker, I think, sorry, or slot machines, or pinball. And the pinball is the most popular one. And it's really interesting because you can get a decent time in that in literally an hour. Or you can go mad grinding it and try and get something really good down for like 8-10 hours. And there's a couple of ways of doing it, so it's actually not a terrible speedrun. Like, this is one of those where obscure speedrun lovers will enjoy this, or people who want to nab kooky world records. So this was one of Sheesh Hardcore's world records on the Master System until recently. Do I think it belongs in B tier? I don't think it does, because most people aren't going to be specialised in pinball. And it's going to take you enjoying pinball a lot to enjoy this run. So I used to play Psycho Pinball a lot, so for me this is a really cool game, and I could grind this until the cows come home if anyone gets the world record, because I want it back. But for most people, you're just going to do a run, and you're going to enjoy the FM music and the charm of the thing, but that's about it. Similar to parlour games. I know Radman has done a poker run of this, that could be interesting as well if cards is your thing. I'm sure there'll be some manipulations to that as well. But it's one of those where like it does its own thing, it's inoffensive. There's nothing brilliantly special to it. What else have we got? We've got some good games left here. Let's look at Monopoly, another board game. If my mouse will behave. Where do I put Monopoly? Bottom of the C tier, just like Trivial Pursuit. Because as you can imagine, it is literally just rolling dice. Getting lucky. I got a supremely lucky run for the world record because the computer got stuck in a jail loop. I did nothing. I wasn't being smart. I just got purely lucky. And it is literally just the charm of the fact that Kevin Seghetti programmed Monopoly, and Kevin Seghetti was the guy who programmed Alf. So, yeah, if you want to play the game that made him make Alf, then play Monopoly. If you like playing board games, you can play this. If you want something low effort, you can play this. It's good insurance money for SMS points, but that's about it. There's a lot of jank in terms of getting the computer to accept trades, or refusing them. The menu system is a little bit clunky, but it's solid enough. Again, it's one of those that might be in a race one time as a novelty, but you can't easily make new categories or interesting categories for it without putting it to a stretch. So, solid C tier. What's left? Well, we've got King's Quest. So King's Quest is like a specialised franchise, point and click games, and they're all slightly different. And again, on the different systems, the interpretations are all slightly different. King's Quest 1 on the Master System, how would I classify that? So that's one of the earliest games I did in the Prolific Hunt this year. I found it really cool. The Master System version has a glitch where you can finish in half the time. Looked really difficult, so I didn't try doing it. So I think King's Quest might be a B tier. because it's the sort of game where if you're good at menu optimization, if you're good at glitches, this will be more up your street. But even if you're not, it's really simple to get a good run of it. It's fun because there's not many games like it. And the only difficult thing about this game is the stairs. Stairs are lethal. Apart from that, it's very simple. The only downside is the page of instructions you need to learn for like what to do, but it doesn't take much learning at all. It's the sort of game you could knock out in one stream or less. And there's only a few people run it so far, but it's one of those sort of blind ends where most people will run the PC or the DOS versions. But similar to how King's Quest V nearly got into the Big 20 recently on the NES, King's Quest on the Master System deserves its place here. You know, it's a solid speedrun. There's different ways you can optimize it. It's got a charm to it. It's definitely one of those that deserves a few more runners. Solid BC again. Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was in the Master 8 this year. Most people did not have a problem with Mortal Kombat. And then there was me, who literally dropped out of the Master 8 because I couldn't complete the goal. So this is not my favourite game. I don't quite understand fighting games, I never have. This game has a quote-unquote manipulation where you cheese the enemy in a corner. Despite this, I never was able to get that consistently. Of course, I'm the #1 ranked player at the moment because I'm stubborn. So I was so stubborn that after the Master 8, I came back to this game and tried again. Literally had a breakdown and started removing myself from Discord servers and had to take a couple of days just to heal myself mentally. I'm not even joking. Because I was so stressed from how I could not understand what I was doing wrong with this game. And it made no sense. It wasn't fun at all. And the only reason I managed to get a completion was because I vowed that no game was going to defeat me on the Master System. Literally, that's it. And you could put this in a race in the future and offer me £1,000,000 to play again, I wouldn't touch it. I hated every moment of this game. I unashamedly did jump kicks in the corner against Goro just to win a round because I almost game overed. Literally the worst thing I've ever put on my emulator. It's an F-tier game, don't touch it unless you want to go completely bonkers. Any other game is an improvement. However, I think most people out there will be okay with it. It's just like, if you play it, get your painkillers ready, get your alcohol ready, you're going to need them. But after I did Mortal Kombat, I played Alex Kidd in Shinobi World. Now, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World is one of the most popular platformers on the NAS system. It's 7 minutes long. Beatrim has run it, Berlin Dude has run it, Rasmus has run it, JKL has run it, and it was in the first Master 8, which was a voted list. So most people really like this game. They think it's better than Miracle World. I, however, do not. Now, I mentioned lag on the Master System. This game, you feel it a lot. The amount of times I either felt like I had inputs being eaten, or the game was unresponsive, or that it was badly programmed, not just relative to it being a Sega game, but in general, I could not believe. I suffered for a week with this game, wanting to explode, and I got one completion, and I'm like nearly dead last on the leaderboard, and I thought I'd never want to touch this again. You know, literally you could put this in a race, and I would have serious doubt about playing. And yet most people will say this is a fun game, it's got interesting tech to it, you can improve at your own pace, it's not terrible because continues. So I don't know where to put this on the tier list, because for me, this goes below Mortal Kombat, to be honest. So we'll come back to that in a while. Let's look at another game that most people will put low down is Marble Madness. If you don't know, Marble Madness on the Master System is the game that most people hate. Only 7 people have ever finished it, and I'm the only one that likes it. So to say this one has got a charm of its own would be understating it. This is like the Rosetta Stone of Marble Madness. The controls are baffling. You don't have a turbo button, you almost have a massive spin shot. And the final screen of this game is one of the hardest things in all of gaming. It's a sort of screen where I can have 90 seconds left on the clock and still game over. And I'm the only one that likes the game, and I'm saying that. So I don't think I can put this anywhere other than the F tier. I think if we're being honest, if I'm talking about most people's experience, Marble Madness has to go in the F tier. Me personally, I would put it more in the C tier. And in the same vein, I think Alex Kidd in Shinobi World has to go low B tier, because most people will at least enjoy it. I refuse to put it higher, because it's a badly made game, but let's admit it, most people will find that one okay, and find Marble Madness bad. But I will say, Marble Madness Master System is not at all the worst thing you could play. It just has a bit of getting used to it, but it's responsive, and it's not that difficult if you accept that it takes a bit of work. I promise. I'm not saying play it, but give it a chance. What else we got? Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is one of those meme games that everyone talks about. It's not brilliant, because most of the speedrun on the Master System is literally just waiting on the map screen. And then when you get to the Zool building, you've got ghosts plenty. One touch will kill you, and it's very, very hard to get through. Final boss fight is actually easier than the stair climb, but the amount of time you literally are sitting doing nothing, waiting for the Stay Puft Man to create himself and get to the chance of the stairs, is horrible. So I can't put it in C tier. It's nowhere near as bad as the bottom though, so I think it goes in D tier. You know, if you're a hardcore Master System fan, you'll still struggle with this one. And it's just mind-numbingly boring. You just want to get your run and be done with it. You don't care how long it takes. And it's so frustrating because even when you know the deaths aren't your fault, you still feel like the game is taunting you. It's just not fun. Maybe there'll be a category one day where you have to actually go and do stuff. That could be fun. You know, it's a well-made game. It's got better graphics and sound than the NES. But it's not brilliant at all. It's interesting that this and Alien Syndrome are down at the bottom. And they're 2 of Red Pepper's best world records. So, again, that tells you how much of a beast he is. Check his runs out. Let's move on to something happier. Kung Fu Kid. Kung Fu Kid is first generation Master System goodness. It's a brilliant little game. It's got some interesting tech to it. The boss fights can be a little bit annoying. Not too difficult to learn. I think the one thing that's annoying is the cycle skip, the platform skip in stage 5. But you don't have to do that. It's just for show, you know, it's to save a bit of time. And you can improve at your own pace. One of the original Master 15 games, very popular. There's no tutorial. I do think this game would benefit from a tutorial because there's a little bit of obscurity in learning how to do it. And I feel lucky because I feel like I'm really good at working things out like that, but a lot of people might struggle with this one. So I don't think I can put it higher than B tier. But it's the sort of game where if you're good at fighting games or games with boss fights, this will be up your alley. It's definitely one of the most popular Master System games, so it's worth it for SMS points. And it's fun for a while, and it's easy to kind of get a decent time and then stop. You never feel like you're gonna grind too long on this game, so that's in its favour as well. Solid beta again. Let's look at Choplifter. Choplifter is one of Berlin Dude's most amazing world records, and again, a game that only he and Mephistus had completed until I made 3 recently. And those two are like first generation Master System legends. And if they're the only people that can complete this game, then you know it's rough. It's very, very hard because it will just kill you out of nowhere and you've done nothing wrong. So this is one of those games where it takes a lot of patience and the charm very quickly wears off. I think this is going to be a D tier game because even if you do it well, it's 16 minutes. I got a 19 odd minute run because I was lucky. Like I had like 1 life left. But it would be so common, I think, with this game for people to try it for a few days and just run away. Not because it's difficult, but because it's unfair. You know, it's one of those first generation Sega games where they've took the difficulty from arcade, but they haven't adjusted for the console market, and it suffers because of that. You know, you feel really good when you finish it. It's kind of like Dana in that regard, where you can get good at it, but it takes a lot of work. And that's even me saying that. So it's fun for a challenge, like if you want to try it for a couple of days and, you know, you'll yelp because you're almost dying a lot and it's fun like that. But as far as trying to get a speed run, it's not that fun. I'll tell you what's better is Air Rescue. So if you don't like Choplifter too much, Air Rescue is your type of game. I think Air Rescue goes in the B tier. And hear me out on this one, because if you've looked at the Air Rescue run, it looks horrendous, or you've tried it, it feels horrendous at first. Because your helicopter explodes on the slightest contact with anything. Hostages are extremely picky, because they will just refuse to climb the ladder. But once you get into it, it's pretty simple and fun. And the only thing that's difficult really is the final stage. But it turned out, we found out recently that you can save tailspin deaths by mashing the 2 button to get your ladder out, and it stops you dying. So immediately a lot of the problem with this game was mitigated there and then. And we found out as well that you can more reliably destroy turrets in the caves with certain weapons. You can use a cheat code to get extra lives. And although you might think it's terrible because you die when you touch stuff, it's only because it's got slightly wonky collision programming on the momentum. So let's say you're moving left and you've still got left momentum, and you let go of left, and before your left momentum is at 0, you press up. What's going to happen is the game is going to add left momentum as well as up, and you're going to crash into something. You don't want to do that. But if you actually come to a dead stop and then move the other direction, it's really simple. And it's not that bad at all because there's not really that much to do. The stages are really short. There's only a few little enemies around. It's kind of like a baby version of Choplifter apart from that final stage, which takes a bit of work, yes, but nothing that any of these B-tier games would be worth more than. Feels really good once you get the hang of it. And again, there's no real time limit, like there's a 5-6 minute time limit in each stage, so you can go as carefully as you want. Or you can spend a couple of days and go banzai and try and get a run. So I think it's underrated. I think it's one of those games where if you've got any knack for the Master System and the lag, or you've got any knack for flying games, it'll be up your street and I think you'll enjoy it. So do give it a chance. And it's the sort of game where you've got to not be afraid of it. You've got to work at it a little bit, but once you do, it pays you back in double. It's not a game you take for granted, but it's up there. It's decent. Now, what else we got? Aladdin. What can we say about Aladdin? It's an excellent game. I think it belongs just about in the A tier because it's one of the Disney games. Very, very popular. Cinematic, good inputs, really, really top-notch graphics. Simple to learn, not much to it, but there's a lot of optimization as well. So, you can get a run and then you can try and improve your play in the cave level or in the castle. You can try and get better boss fights, but it's not on the same level as the other Disney games for sure, in terms of absolute top level, because you'll get to a decent mid-10 time and you'll feel more satisfied than you would getting a mid-tier time on the earlier games. But at the same time, if you want to go for world record in this game, you've got to do pretty much everything, and it does have some sort of stress to it, You've got to work for it. Like, I got to 1030 odd, and I thought I'm not really game for cutting that down by half a minute because it's still work. So 10 odd minute run, world record I think was JKL at one point, so that tells you it's a really optimized run. But it's also really cinematic and beautiful, decent for a not too hard working game if you want something to relax with, but something that's platforming. So if you're not too much of a fan of like Legend of Illusion even, Aladdin would be a good choice for you. Or if you like character platformers but you want something a little bit longer and with a bit more bite, again, Aladdin's a good choice. Another character platformer, we've got Dracula. So, Dracula on the Master System, really, really good graphics. Fast play, so it plays faster than the Game Boy version. Nobody yet has done a speedrun of the medium or hard. I've done casual playthroughs of those, they're not trivial. They would make good speedruns. But the easy speedrun is 3 minutes and change. It's mostly very simple, but there's bits of it you can optimize. The only reason I'm going to put it in B tier is because it's so short. On as far as like the level you've got to be at, it's the same as Aladdin. It's just it's that much shorter. But if you want to get world record in that, you've certainly got to do some work. Beautiful game, well worth playing casually as well. And you might be interested in the Game Boy version where you go out of bounds as well, or you can do lots more optimization. One of those games that's like, it deserves more runners. There's only a few of us have run it, I'm not sure why, but it's really well made. It's got beautiful music. It's just a really good speedrun. It deserves more runners. Smart Alex run this one, so that tells you it's good. And then we've got Batman Returns. Now, Batman is amazing as a speedrun. I'm not sure whether I'm going to put it in the A tier or the S tier. So the any percent run for Batman on the Master System is 1 minute 30 because there's a warp to the final stage. And you would think that that makes it an easy speedrun, but it's not. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. This is a very, very optimized run because you've got a ninja rope and the swinging on that is very precise. We retooled the entire final boss fight to serve a cycle. There's not much RNG at all, but the waterfall stage is really technical because you're swinging across logs. It feels wonderful to do. You can get into a groove with it. It can be frustrating and it can bite back at you. You've got to earn your stripes with it, similar to Kensington. The only thing is that because it's so short, I'm not sure I could put it in the S tier. Like, top NES runners would not have it for breakfast, but they wouldn't be sweating bullets over it like they would with the top 5 games here. It would be just like par for the course. But I will say, if you want to get the world record in this, you will be sweating, because I took like 5,500 attempts to get that. I really worked. So there's still like 1 second to be saved, but to get a decent run is not going to take you that long. If you struggle with spatial stuff, you might struggle with this one at first. I certainly did. It took me a week to get my first completion on this game, but once you get into it, it's so good. In fact, thinking about it further, there's not just the any percent category, there's the full game. We can put it in the S tier. Because the full game hasn't been properly optimized yet. Everyone just runs the any percent. But at some point, people are going to start running the full game, and that is going to be so amazing. It is a beautiful game. I think Yuzo Koshiro worked on it. Aspect, who did a lot of the good Master System platformers, and I can't speak highly enough of it. You know, Batman, Dime Caper, Kensington, these games made me who I am. They strengthened me so much as a speedrunner. Mentally, learning consistency. It's just so, so good. And it's so short as well that you should be trying it and getting a run. A game that's similar, that has only recently come to my attention, is Hook. Hook is absolutely brilliant. So, a few French runners had run this, and I picked it up recently because I'm going through all the Master System. And it turned out that there's a run function that nobody had found yet, because it was a prototype and nobody had read the instruction manual. And I started running, and honestly, this game feels like parkour. It is amazing. The bosses are difficult. There are cycles to save everywhere. There's a little bit of jank to the collision sometimes with spikes. But again, this game, it takes a pound of flesh from you to get a good time. It feels amazing to run. Graphics are absolutely perfect and beautiful. It would be beautiful in a race. I think this is S tier, to be honest. This is just like, it's 11 minutes. It's got enough stress to challenge you, but it's easy access if you want to just get a run. I know Hook is on the NES, but it's not rated as a game, but this one, I don't understand how this game's flown under the radar for so long. This, I think, will be one of the most popular games in future, because the mechanics are so beautiful. Like, you have to hold down the run button to accelerate, but if you jump in the air, you can't accelerate anymore, so you really have to plan out what you're doing. I can't speak highly enough of this game. I'm really looking forward to more people running it and pushing down the world record. Let's look at Wonder Boy in Monster World. RPG-like game. Wonder Boy is one of Berlin Dude's favourite type of games. He's got the world record in all of those. It featured in the Master 8 last year, so Paul Saltine and I did full runs. We loved it. Paul at some point said he might grind for a 26, which would be amazing. I personally don't know if I could put this in the S tier, because you get a good time in this game, and all that matters is, did you get the ice barrier skip? Because if you didn't get the ice barrier skip first try and you lost 30 seconds, you've got free real estate to gamble on every run you do in the future for a PB. But if you got most of the good stuff and you got the ice barrier skip in the first few tries, like I did, you've got no motivation to improve. Because you're essentially playing the lottery. There's no manipulation, it's literally just throwing yourself at a wall. And that gets boring after a while. So, yes, casually it's one of the S tier games. It's a beautiful rendition of the Genesis game, it's more accessible, it's perfect as a Master System game casually. But as a speedrun, I don't think it's quite the top tier. It's something that everyone will enjoy running, certainly, and getting a time in and doing a little bit of grinding, or just, pushing down from 6 hearts to 5 to 4, but you can be satisfied with a mid-time with this more easily than those other top runs. Still, again, one of the games, there's like 317 games on the Master System, and this is in the top here. You should be running this if you want to be a Master System speedrunner. Everyone should look at this game. I'm going to disagree on Bubble Bobble, though. You would think Bubble Bobble is one of the best Master System games casually, but as a speedrun, it's not so fun. So, the main category is Any End, which is 100 levels, and that takes 45 minutes, or 50, and even if you do it in 45 minutes, there's a lot of deaths. Even if you can manipulate it to get umbrellas, there's a lot of deaths. As an arcade game, it's fantastic. As a casual game, it's wonderful, especially 2-player. But grinding this for a speedrun, you have to be dedicated, or like patient, or just willing to work hard. And the world record for this is amazing. I don't think anyone's going for that. Like, even Berlin Dude is miles off the world record, which tells you just how optimized it is. But obviously, as well as that, because you get unlimited continues, it's very easy to just do a run of this game in like 1 hour and just get a 500 point SMS point time. It's just that you're going to die a lot and you're not going to be able to stop it because the game plays really fast and all the different items are on counters and you can't manage all of that. So it's probably the sort of game you would break out once in a while for like a special occasion or a one-off stream, or just to celebrate the beautiful graphic and sound, but you wouldn't do much more with it than that. So C tier for Bubble Bubble. Not many left. Let's look at Alex Kidd in Miracle World. Where do I place that? So we placed Shinobi World in the B tier because most people will find it a B tier game. I think in comparison, Miracle World has to be a C tier because it's twice as long and a lot of the game is literally just trying to avoid dying. And it feels like busy work, to be honest. Like, again, casually, it's an absolutely beautiful game and it's charming and it's fun. But when you're doing the speedrun of this, you end up just praying for a deathless run, or you want to avoid a death on a lightning cloud. It comes down to so little, and little things affect it so much that it sort of sucks the fun out. Because 90% of the speedrun is doing nothing, or just running. Which is a shame, but again, beautiful casually, it's just not the sort of game that most people will want to speedrun. At the same time, again, you can buy continues and you can earn extra lives as much as you want. So if you want to do a run of it in 15-20 minutes, you can. It's just I don't think you'll enjoy it as much as the other games. Let's look at Sonic games. Sonic 2, I personally always really loved, casually. And I had all the Sonic games as a kid, and I felt Sonic 2 held up better for replay value. As a speed game, I'm not so sure. Berlin Dude, again, has got a top time in this one, which tells you it's difficult. It's very popular, but this game takes a lot more learning than the other two, and the mistakes you make will really bite you for like 20-30 second time losses. Deaths will get you down. It's really frustrating, and it's one of those games where, I don't know, like the bosses can go wrong in a flicker, and even if you're okay spatially, it can just go wrong so much that it becomes frustrating to grind. So, I don't know, especially with the fact that you're waiting on point screens so much with this one, it's not so fun. But if you're specialised at good platformers and like movement optimization, I think you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to put it low down in the B tier. Sonic games don't have a great reputation to begin with. Sonic 2 doesn't help that. It's sort of like casually it improves on Sonic 1, but as a speedrun, it's got all the worst elements. It's got gimmicks you don't need, it's got water level that's awkward. Um, Good luck if you get in the Chaos Emeralds, that's even worse. And the flywheels in Gimmick Mountain are annoying. There's just a lot to be frustrated about, and the graphics and sound don't make up for it. Sonic Chaos, on the other hand, is a really good speedrun. And as I say, I didn't find Sonic Chaos had as much replay value as a kid, because I found it easy to complete, and that was it. But as a speedrun, it's beautiful. Now, the one annoying thing is, again, mistakes can sort of cost you a lot, and it takes a bit of pound of flesh out of you, but it's definitely an A tier speedrun, because it's a lot quicker with the spin outs and peel dashes. You're not waiting around on the point screens. Bosses are much quicker, there's a bit more cool tech to this one. And it certainly feels easier to get something of a respectable time, but you'd still have to work if you wanted to get an 11. But this one shows off the Master System a bit more, just in terms of the speed and the prettiness, and the fact that it doesn't have as much lag feeling to it. Sonic 2, you often get 45-degree slopes that eat your inputs, or spike traps that feel badly placed. Sonic Chaos, you've got different routes to it, and you always feel like when it goes wrong, it's your fault, except Aqua Planet, but that's, no game is perfect. It's definitely one of those A tier speedruns where if you like the Master System, give it a chance. Don't just say it's a Sonic game, I don't like it. And again, it's never been in a Master Race, but it probably will be at some point. And it's really quite easy to learn. You can do it in a couple of hours, because a lot of the time you're just saying spin dash to here, spin dash to here, learn a couple of backups, and that's it. Really underrated game. Let's look at the Incredible Crash Dummies, one of the most popular new meme games this year. I would say that's a B tier. It's not anything brilliant. It's a game I owned as a kid, and it was really fun because Crash Dummies and all the arcade elements to it and the loops. But a one loop speedrun of this will literally take you half an hour. And most of that time is just going to be on getting good bomb energy and the rocket stage, which can be a little bit annoying casually, but is not really hard as a speedrun. The rest is just busy work, and that's about it. But again, if you want SMS points, perfect game for you. You don't even need to work too hard, just, do the basic and get a 3.0x, and that's it. At some point, maybe people will do 5 loops and beat the game, but the Game Boy version is much more optimized, so look at that, see if you like it. That's about it. It's got some character to it, but Nothing much more than that. Populous is similar, but Populous is at least interesting as a speedrun because the main category is just win a game. So Populous on the Master System was one of my little projects as a kid, where I worked out the code system and didn't know that there were infinite levels. But basically, there's a password generator, and in theory, there are like 32,000 levels you could pick from. So you could have a lot of fun finding a specific level to play and win really quickly in this game, or one that you feel comfortable with. And there's a lot of scope for improvement. So the world record at the moment is one where you've just got a couple of evil people on an Iceland, and you can build very quickly over to them and kill them before they start making castles. But there might be something even quicker. There's a swamp glitch you can use. It's very charming. There is a lot of lag to it, so it's not one for everyone. But if you like point and click style games, if you like something that requires a bit of thinking and creativity, then this could be the game for you. I'll put it in B tier because there's a lot more individual scope to it than a lot of the C tier games. A lot more replay value. I don't think 1 to 100 speedruns will ever be popular, although they are on the SNES and the Amiga versions. But it's certainly one of those where you can just like pick a level and have fun with it. And it really looks good as well. So B tier run. Arcade Smash Hits is similar because you can either play Missile Command or Breakout or Centipede and get 10,000 points. And that's just really cool and simple and fun. I love Centipede, so I used to grind that when I was younger, just, put some music on, play Centipede for ages. Nice and simple and mindless. It's really short as well, and because you've got 3 different games, it's like parlor games and casino games. But because it's more arcade games, it's a little bit higher in ranking, in my opinion. More people are going to find it enjoyable, especially older people who've played arcade games like this before, maybe on the Atari. There's a bit of optimization, there's a bit of luck, and who knows, maybe at some point somebody will complete Breakout, which would be crazy because that's a difficult game. But again, if you want SMS points, you can do that for like half an hour, get a 1 minute speedrun and be done. Very charming. B tier game. Let's look at Flight of Pigorus, another homebrew. It's not got any jank at all, it's a beautiful little 5-minute shoot 'em up, so it's got to go in the B tier. Doesn't take any learning, couple of bosses to it, and you can kill them quicker. Shows off the best graphics on the Master System. Really well made. If you like shoot 'em ups, if you like flying games, that's going to be for you. White Hat's done a really good run of that one. And again, because most of it is just auto-scrollers and shoot 'em up, you don't have to work too hard. If you like a Lester, you'll enjoy this one as well. Nice just to relax with, you don't have to do too much work. Solid B tier speedrun. Similarly, Blast Arena, another of my favourites from the homebrew section. Another B tier run. 10 levels of fixed space shooting. You can optimize it as much as you want to, you can just play it casually and get a decent time. There's a boss at the end. You've got a nice little change direction mechanic where you can lock your firing. So it's easy to get the hang of the controls. You've got random power-ups, which make it a bit more fun to play each time. Very short, so obviously it can't go in the A tier. There's not too much to it, but if you like shooting games, if you like arcade games, you'll really enjoy this one. Feels really good to play as well. B tier game. 2 games left. Pit-Pot. Pit-Pot was the very first Master System game, apart from Snail Maze. A card game on the Japanese Mark III. Where does that go? B or C tier, I think. So Pit-Pot is again one of the shortest Master System speedruns. 40 odd seconds for beginner. little maze game where you've got some hidden secrets because Sega like doing that. Get a few items, rescue the princess before Zelda. It is very one-dimensional, but there is no jank at all, and the beginner level and the intermediate level haven't got speedruns yet, so similar to Montezuma's Revenge, which has only got one level done so far. There's room for optimization with this one. It would make a lovely little palette cleanser for a race. It's really pretty, it's like core Sega Master System culture. It's getting more popular and it's not too difficult at all. So again, if you want points on the Master System leaderboard, run this game. B-tier game. And the final game for this list now is Laser Ghost. Laser Ghost isn't janky at all, but it is a light gun game. It's not easy per se for SMS points, because it's a hard game to complete. Because of the final boss, and again, Laser Ghost, one of the few games I couldn't actually complete when I was a kid. So I think it has to go in D tier because most people will find it a bit difficult. I mean, maybe you could use a mouse instead of a light gun, in which case maybe a C tier. But it's a lovely little auto-scrolling light gun game, really good graphics and sound, really cool. There's a lot of optimization to it in terms of getting the character to move forward at the right time and shooting accurately, but if you're not fond of shooting games, you will find this a little bit out of reach. You might prefer something shorter like Safari Hunt, Marksman Shooting, or like Global Defense SDI, but it's a really cool game casually. I just don't think it's brilliant as a speedrun. You can play it with the controller or with a light gun. Definitely check it out though. It's one of those that you should definitely look at because if you do enjoy it, you'll really, really enjoy it. So that's all the 76 games that I've played so far for the Master System. And down at the bottom in the tier of hell, Alien Syndrome. Don't touch that unless you want to go mad. Mortal Kombat. Don't touch that unless you want to be a world number one. Marble Madness. Don't touch that unless you want to go to a mental asylum. And then we've got Danon, Ghostbusters, Choplifter and Laser Ghost in the D tier. Slightly janky. And in the C tier, we've got Heroes Against Demons, a very long puzzle game. Parlour games and casino games. Little family games that are fun. We've got Golfomania, Great Golf, Great Soccer, World Soccer, Slapshot, Super Tennis, California Games 1 and 2, Zool, Bubble Bobble, World Grand Prix, High School Kimigumi, WWF, Extreme Volleyball, Sega Chess, Alf, Shockingly High, X-Men Mojo World, Street Fighter 2, Trivial Pursuit, Monopoly and Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And then we'll move up into the higher level. In the B tier, we've got B for Bruce Lee, Ease, Credit Warp category, Sega World Tournament Golf, Japanese Great Golf or J-Golf, Buggy Run, Chase HQ, Captain Silver, The New Zealand Story, Mercs, Montezuma's Revenge, Back to the Future 3, Putt and Putter, Do the Same, The Incredible Crash Dummies, Lemmings, a slightly different puzzle game, Baku Baku Animal and Columns, Snail Maze, King's Quest, Quest for the Crown, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World, Sonic 2, Kung Fu Kid, Air Rescue, Dracula, Populous, Arcade Smash Hits, Flight of Pigorus, Blast Arena and Pitpot. All good games if you want to expand your SMS points on the leaderboards or if you're a specialist in a particular type of game. And then getting to the top of the mountain, we've got the A-tier games, Legend of Illusion, Prince of Persia, Quartet, Robocod, Outrun, Castello Ratimbum, Aladdin, Wonder Boy in Monster World, and Sonic Chaos. And then the very best games on the Master System. Everyone watching this video should be running these. I don't care if you're a NES runner or not. Castle of Illusion, Land of Illusion, The Lucky Dime Caper, Kensington, Zillion, Batman Returns, and Hook. And that's going to be all for this tier list. I will see you when I've run 76 more Master System games. I'll be halfway towards the library. Good luck to all of you running the Master System in 2025. Have a wonderful year, until I see you next. Glory to you and your D-pad.